we're able to have a group of players that I think when you look at all those players that were part of that process with him, you're talking about very good players in every position. We had a lot of depth, and the thing that I like about those players was that everybody had a function, but also the majority of the group of players were technical, had experience, were creative. They treated the ball well, so it bringing Bora, it did help because it changed that. And I think with Marcelo, if he would come, I think the American players would love him because he's a teacher of the game. And whether we like it or not, and people say, well, these players are professionals, that they cannot be taught anything. I don't agree with that because I've seen it with Johan Cruyff. I've seen it with Pep Guardiola. I've seen it with Marcelo Bielsa. They always can learn. And I think also, Marcelo is the type of coach that he likes to attack. He's very offensive, and he takes risks, and he's not afraid of playing good football. And I think that's what we've been lacking for a lot of years in the country, without putting any coaches down, okay? But I think our players are capable of playing a style that Marcelo Bielsa brings to the table.
No, I agree, Hugo. I think our style has lacked creativity as of late, but I wanted to jump to a topic that's been dominating the U.S. soccer realm. And for our listeners who do not know about the Jonathan Gonzalez saga, Jonathan Gonzalez is a player for Monterrey. He's a central player, and he was involved at the U.S. national to youth level and has been making has started for Monterrey, made the Liga MX teams of the week, has been playing brilliantly. And even after playing a lot for the U.S., he actually filed a one-time switch, is actually called up for the next round of friendlies with the Mexican national team. Herculez Gomez talked about the saga that's happened with Jonathan and his family and the difference between the ways the FMF and USSF treat the player. Hugo, where do you think the U.S. went wrong within that whole saga?
Okay, let me answer you two questions, okay?
All right.
Because I know you've asked me about the candidates. I can tell you this, I've spoken to 3 of the candidates, right?
Uh-huh.
Mm-hmm.
And the only thing I can tell you is this, and I've spoken to them. My main thing is this. I think if they're going to come in, whoever comes in and it's obviously get picked to be the president, they need to think about our football here, our youth clubs, okay? Because, there have been issues about, so many things that they want to bring to the table, but they need to think about that because the future of the national team and the future of the MLS is not at the top. Mm-hmm. It's at the bottom.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? And until we have a good plan for the bottom, we're going to get some players here and there, but we will never be the power that we're supposed to be. So anybody who comes, if they really want to change this and leave a legacy once they leave, they need to start thinking about what we can do to improve our football at this, at the youth level, to be able to basically develop elite players, not just good players or very good players. I'm talking about elite players.
Right.
So they have a big task. Now, they can do it if they're not afraid to change the system, if they're not afraid to bring the right people. Because I think right now the people in the federation, I think their cycle is done. Okay, I think they've served for a lot of years, and it's time for them to set, get on the side, let somebody else try something different. Now, going to the Jonathan question, I can tell you that I know Jonathan very well. I've known his parents for more than 4 years. I didn't discover Jonathan. Obviously, somebody had recommended it to me, and we brought him to a training center. I used to do training centers for the national team in Northern California.
Mm-hmm.
And those training centers were basically open to the academy clubs, obviously, and non-academy clubs. And my whole idea about that was to make sure that not only the academy clubs were, prefer to come to these training centers, but also to be able to give the other clubs an opportunity to send their players, even though they were not in the academy program. And Jonathan came out of one of those programs with a club in Santa Rosa. And somebody recommended it to me and told me, look, I have this type of players. And obviously, look, my idea was to first, if I was working with the national team at that time, I was a coach, and I said, look, to the staff and to US Soccer, I said, I think these are the type of players that I would like to bring to our camps and training centers, because I feel that we have American players that can play this type of football and this style. So obviously the technical part was very important, not only the physical part, or the athleticism, as they call it here in America, but the technical part, the IQ of their football was important. And when Jonathan was brought to us, to the first training center, we saw that he had something. And obviously he was a skinny kid, not the typical physical kid, but we saw something that I felt he could have a chance with us. One was his technical ability. The other one was his ability to play in 2 positions, 3 positions. And the best thing that I saw in him was his tactical awareness, even at his age. And those 3 things we saw in him, and we felt that we had to bring him in. We had him for some training centers, and then obviously he was invited for the national team camp. And from there, obviously, we had, we knew we had not discovered, but we knew that we had a talented player to play 2 or 3 positions in the middle with him. Now, again, what happened with him, and this is something that I think also whoever comes into the national team program as a president, they need to realize something. I think at U.S. Soccer for years, we've been lacking the understanding how to deal with different cultures. The Hispanic culture is probably a very different culture than everybody else. And the way you treat certain cultures are not the same as you would treat the Hispanic culture. You have to have certain things, and you have to know the people to be able to deal with them. And I think in Jonathan's case, and it's been on other cases in the national team where we have failed also. There's 2 players right now that are playing in Mexico that also we had issues on the cultural side, because we didn't treat them, the way we should have treated them, and especially the families. And I think that's where U.S. Soccer has failed to understand that. And I don't think they've been hesitant to really understand it or want to understand it, because they never made really an effort to be able to reach the people or the community the way we should have done it for years. So that's one thing that worries me, because we'll continue to lose players. I'm not just talking about Mexico, but maybe other countries, but especially with the Hispanic population here in America. We need to, open our eyes, and I think somebody tried that part of the reason that we had failed to retain Jonathan, because we were obviously not a humble organization. We thought that everything we do is they have to come to us. We didn't have to come to them. Mm-hmm. We were arrogant. Mm-hmm. And you can't do those things. I think the federation's job is to reach people, not to wait for people to reach them. Because whether we like it, the Hispanic culture is a football culture. Mm-hmm. You go to their homes Saturdays and Sundays, they're going to be watching football. Their parents, their dads. Mm-hmm. And I think we have failed there. And the leadership right now of the federation should be accountable for that. Because we not only lost, I'm going to tell you something, we not only lost a good player, okay, but I think also we lost a good person, a kid that was, I remember talking to him, he always used to tell me, they want me to play for Mexico. Even one time he told me, look, Chivas Guadalajara wants to sign me, but they told me that they can't sign me unless I renounce to U.S. And And he said to me, I don't want to, I don't want to go to Chivas because if not, I won't play for the national team. But while I was there, obviously, I always try to keep things in perspective, making sure that all these people, all this Hispanic talent that we had, I made them feel that they were part of the U.S., okay? But it was a battle, to be honest with you. It was a battle because we could have done so many other things, not just for Jonathan, but a lot of the kids and some of them that just left to play for Mexico.
What do you make of the current situation when it comes to dual nationals from the national federation?
Okay. Well, here's the thing. I'm going to tell you my own experience. Mm-hmm. Okay. In 82, I was living in LA, and the national team from El Salvador had qualified for the World Cup. And I was 16 years old, and my uncle spoke to the federation and said, look, I have my nephew. He's a very good player. I was playing already semi-pro, and I was in a professional club with the LA Aztecs. And he said, look, can you guys see him for the future? Can you take a look? You guys are coming to LA for a tournament. It would be good if you guys see him. And for our surprise and my uncles and mine, they said, no, we don't have any time, Again, they were going to the World Cup. And that hurt me a lot because I wasn't asking to go to the World Cup. I was just asking to be seen, since I was a Salvadorian. And basically, to make a long story short, I ended up being disappointed. And in my mind, I said, okay, I won't play for them. Hopefully I can play for somebody else one day. And then a year and a half later, I was offered to play for the U.S., and I didn't even think twice because I felt they had, taken the time to come and talk to me to play for U.S. So I can really see what could happen, and I can tell you almost 100% that what happened to Jonathan wasn't because he didn't want to play for us. It was because he was with when he was with my group. I had spoken to Richie Williams about bringing him with the 98 group because he was capable of competing for a spot in the World Cup for the under-17s with the 98 group. That's how good I think he was. And everybody agreed to that. But then he wasn't given a chance. And then he was left out. But he kept, with us. He kept, thinking that he could play for us. Then obviously, I think he had a couple games with the under-20s. And he's left out of the World Cup with that one also. So that's 2 times already that, he's thinking about his holding because I know Mexico had been after him, not this year. He's been after him for the last 3 years since he was with the 14s with us. Because I knew that, because I know the Mexican, I know all the Mexican people from the Federation. They had been after him for the last 3 years while I was still with the national team. But, I've spoken to Jonathan and his parents. I said, be patient. I think you're going to get there because you're one of the top players. And obviously I left. I don't know what happened. But then what really killed the whole situation was, I think, when U.S. had not qualified for the World Cup, and I think they had 2 games in Europe. One was against Portugal, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
And he doesn't get called to the World Cup. For those friendly games. And Josh Sargent, I think, the kid that played in the under-17s and 20s, he got called, and a couple of young guys of the 98 group got called.
Yep.
Now, without taking anything from those kids, basically, Jonathan had been playing a year already with Monterrey.
Right.
Starting in every game, and he was part of the success in that team. I don't know why. I can just think why maybe, but I don't know what the reason was basically for him not being called because it was a FIFA date anyway. Monterrey could have had to say yes if they would have called him. But I suspect, and this is my personal opinion, I don't think they thought he was a player for them. I don't think
Really?
They thought that his style of playing